got a big battle in front of us, baby. And it's just starting. So let's get funky like a monkey. For 15 years, the American dream has done it with you. Don't fail me now. Lord, don't fail me now.
All right, we're live.
You're live, brother. Well, live to tape. Live to tape. It's not live.
Live meaning the camera's on.
Like yeah, we got the hot cam, the microphones are on. We're here. We're ready to work. Let's do it.
Owingoe.
Yo, listen, man.
Sorry,
I thought this was a wrestling podcast. If you want to start singing Disney tunes, man.
If I could sing, I would.
Well,
The song.
you know what? I could probably pull an MJF here. I could probably be able to start singing some show tunes for you.
We'll set it up. We'll break into.
All right, we'll work that one out.
I'm not ready for this.
Okay, all right, we'll work it out.
All right, how about
next year? For next year, we'll do it.
Yeah, next year. That's a 2021 thing. We're gonna.
That's a 21 thing. It's a 21 thing.
21. All right. So I guess we have to talk about TLC. And
do we have to?
Well, yeah. It's probably the most newsworthy show of the past week.
No, it's true.
Especially with the return of Charlotte Flair. Anyway. Asuka had a mystery partner, which I think we all knew it was going to be Charlotte for the most part. Versus Shayna and Nia. It ended up being Charlotte. Asuka and Charlotte ended up beating Shayna and Nia pretty easily. I thought way too easy. Charlotte dominated Nia. Right? Did she take a lunch, or did she? To me, it looked like she took a lunch.
This was the. How can I put this? This is a match that seemed a little clunky, right? Because you take a look at the heel champions, or the former champions at this point, but Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, and you see them as the package that they were presented as, and they were presented as the most dominant team in all of the WWE women's division, right? There's bar none, no one more dominant than them physically. So the original match was with Asuka tag teaming with Lana. Now, with all due respect to Lana, it makes sense that in storyline they basically take her out, because the match, although it seems like, and yes, Charlotte had a very dominant performance, the heels got no, I don't want to say no offense in on her, but very little. Asuka was the one that played the babyface in peril. In many ways it seems silly because she's the Raw Women's Champion, but in the context of the four women who were in this match, it makes sense because she's the smallest. So it does seem that at some point she would be the most vulnerable one to get offense on, especially on the babyface side. Makes total sense. And then you get the hot tag into Charlotte. The problem is that when I saw this match, I'm like, all right, the four women, they're all stars in their own right. I just thought that the match as a whole was very clunky, not very smooth, which is fine. It's supposed to be a contest. I totally get it, but there were a lot of spots in the match that, particularly one that stands out for me huge is the whole idea of, again, tag team wrestling. You got to get the hot tag in. When you have Asuka trying to get to Charlotte, and the heels are trying to get offense in on her, and it seems like the heels, this is where it clearly shows that the heels are not a very smooth tag team, meaning they had no idea how to cut off. They had no idea how to cut off Asuka to get to Charlotte. When Charlotte got an ice cold tag, she came in, she beat the pants out of both of them. And unfortunately for the heels, they didn't know how to feed her, because Shayna Baszler, being the one that could feed, but of course you don't want to get in there getting your clock cleaned. And then Nia Jax is, I don't know where she was at that moment, but when she comes in, then it's like you can get the offense in on her. Again, it's weird to me because I see that match and my thought process is I didn't really care about the champions as a whole because I don't think the Nia and Shayna were a good team only because of the fact that they're such dominant individual stars that it's kind of hard for me to see them together as a team. And when you look at Charlotte and Asuka, it's the same premise. They're not really a team. They're two mega single stars, and they put them together as a team. And it's the constant theme all the time of always putting two clear individual talents that have been presented and promoted and booked and everything on the WWE TV show as single stars. And then in order to have women's tag team champions, you merge them together and make them a team. At some point, and again, this is something WWE Creative is going to have to really start looking into is you got to start looking at the process of getting away from that formula of makeshift teams and actually putting together teams and presenting them as teams so that you can have actual viable units that are vying and competing for the tag team titles on a regular basis, and then they can be the women's tag team division. Right now I can count maybe 2 or 3 teams off the top of my head. The one that seems the best, the real team, is the Riot Squad, because again, the Iconics have been broken up. I know that they're doing something with Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke. I know they're doing something with Peyton Royce and her name escapes me right now, Lacey Evans. So they're trying, but they need to get away from this makeshift stuff and actually start creating, or not creating, but promoting these teams to where we as the audience invest in them as teams, so that when the titles are on the line, it's actually with teams that we see and we care about, not this makeshift stuff that we've been watching for the last 6 months or so on WWE TV.
Yeah, the action in the ring is the least of my worries. And this was my problem with the entire show. For the most part, the performers themselves had great performances across the board. Like, everyone, they worked pretty well. Like, their stuff looked really, really good, and the hard-hitting stuff looked hard-hitting, and they took big risk and, put on a show. But at the end of the day, if the story sucks, it doesn't really matter much. And I don't mean the story within the match. I'm talking about what's the direction for the characters? Where are they going? Why are they doing the things that they're doing? And how does it make them look? Right? Like, for instance, why in the hell would Asuka, who was getting along with Lana has never done anything wrong to Asuka as far as I can remember. If she did, it wasn't big enough,
nobody remembers it. That's
because Lana pretty much Lana just started being a wrestler. So everything she did before was as a manager, which you can pretty much throw away. You can still use it if you need to, but I don't remember her crossing any females. She would cross males to help Rusev, whatever, but she really never did anything to any females that I remember. She probably did. If I go back and watch everything, yes, she probably did.
If you dig deep enough, you'll find it.
Yeah. But one thing I do remember is what Charlotte was doing before she left. Do you remember?
Yeah, she was basically, going around. I know the last thing, she was the NXT Women's Champion. She was going around saying that, she is the champion of champions type deal, and popping off on everybody else and acting as the heel, saying that she was gonna, she's went from NXT, then dominated Raw and SmackDown. Now she's going back to NXT to basically teach these girls how it's done. Blah, blah. She was the quintessential heel. She's gone for 6 months. She comes back, and now she is, kissing babies and shaking hands, out in the ring. It's a huge departure. It really is. It has little to no explanation, and there's little tie-in. I guess the reality is that there's very little reason for us as an audience to understand why it is. Forget about the fact that she teamed with Asuka. Forget about that. But let's just say that was there a thread with Shayna Baszler and or Nia Jax, before she left, that would make sense for Charlotte to come back and want to take the straps off of them?
Well,
Or does she even need to be a babyface? She could still kind of be a pseudo heel.
They've actually done a good job. I already see the motivation. The motivation is beating Asuka for her title. That's the motivation. Charlotte's not necessarily hiding it. She's being buddy, but she mentioned the Raw. She tried to mention the title on Raw. She's being really over the top, which tells me, okay, this is going to lead to a match between Asuka and Charlotte. I don't like how they're getting to this place because Charlotte was feuding with Asuka before she left. That was the last match she had on Raw, was against Asuka. And the week before that, or 2 weeks before that, there was a 3-way tag match where it was Asuka and Charlotte already turned on Asuka. This has already happened. It was Bayley and Sasha versus Iconics versus Asuka and Charlotte. And at the end of the match, Charlotte hits Asuka. This already happened. And then they had a match. I think Charlotte beat Asuka the first time. Then Asuka got her revenge. And Charlotte was out the door. That's the last match Charlotte had. So for Asuka to be a dumb babyface, like every babyface in WWE is dumb. So dumb. They don't see what's coming. They get betrayed. They get jumped. They have no friends. And she's just adding to it. Asuka is so dumb. It's like a horror movie. When you go into the room.
We'll get there later.
Someone hear something weird in the room and they go, I need to go check it out. No, you don't. You need to leave. You need to leave because you're going to get murdered. So Asuka's going to get murdered. She knows she's going to get murdered, but she's so dumb, her character, and the way it's written.
I will say this, though, right? That makes sense. The question becomes is, if you eliminate, you eliminate Lana from this match, you write her off from this match. Name who else could have subbed into this match besides Charlotte that would have made sense. Meaning,
they should have not had. I would have not had anyone sub. Yes. Do you get a better match? Yes, but that's small thinking. Who cares about one random match? It's a one random match that's not important. You don't care about the tag team division.
Well, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Do I think it's a random match? No, I don't, because it's a reintroduction for Charlotte, so none of that's going to be random. If the premise of this is they're going to be tag team champions and Charlotte is basically, stringing Asuka along to eventually turn on her and go after the Raw Women's Championship, depending on how it's executed, it can be interesting or not. Could it mean that Asuka looks silly knowing that I'm like, all right, 6 months is not that long. I mean, people do turn over a new leaf, but at the same time, it's not explained. And it would have made sense if Charlotte Flair would have had a lingering issue with one of the heels on the other side, or both of them at some point, because that would have made more sense instead of having what seems like a thread with the person who's her partner, because it would have made more sense that then Charlotte would have turned on Asuka. And then like, all right, keep Shayna and Nia as the champions, and then we go directly into this story. But if they're, if WWE's looking for, to extend it and get the belts off of them, which makes sense because there is no other tag team, no other women's tag team that WWE currently has right now that would have been able to beat Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, if not Asuka and Charlotte Flair. So it makes sense. It's just a matter of like,
Look. There's 100 other ways they could have got to this. And Asuka has no challengers. Charlotte can show up and she doesn't need to turn on Asuka to become a challenger. She's literally walks in and is the number one contender without doing anything.
And that's, again,
off her pedigree and off she already has beef with Asuka. And everyone knows she already has beef with Asuka.
Well, here's the thing, and I say this respectfully. I think at times people will forget. People will forget. In other words, if you're going to retell that story, it makes sense to give some kind of a hint. Only because of the fact that they WWE does so much TV, good or bad, it doesn't matter. They do so much of it that at times you forget.
Yeah, that's not an excuse to write bad television. I'm sorry.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
I'd rather.
No, it's not. But what I'm saying is what I'm saying is for me is that 6 months ago, I don't recall that the last match that Charlotte had on television prior to her hiatus was losing to Asuka. Like, I don't remember that being the last thing. And it's not because the match wasn't good. It's just a matter that there's so many memorable moments that both of these women have had either together or separated that it doesn't come to mind. And since it wasn't and WWE didn't remind us of this because obviously that's not the story they're telling right now. They're just reintroducing Charlotte and she's a surprise partner. And then you know, I take it at face value, but even though it's still it smells funny because I'm like, you know, that position could have been given to another talent had WWE been building up the other women underneath that could have been a partner for Asuka. Not the obvious with Charlotte, you know.
Look, you spent I don't know how many weeks. It has to be between 10 and 15 weeks of building up this Lana story. And whether you like Lana or not, you've put in the work. Your writers or in Lana and Nia Jax, the work is already done.
Listen,
all Lana has to do to get over is put Nia through a table. That's all she has to do.
Notice what you. Well, yeah, there's ways to do it. There's ways to.
There's ways to do it.
There's ways to do it.
She even could have did it. Look, you could have made up a Charlotte could have said that I'm here on behalf of Lana. Look, Asuka, I know we had our differences, but Nia took Lana out, and Lana's my friend. I don't know if Charlotte and Lana have any beef. To me, I know Charlotte and Lana, and Asuka have had 10 matches, 10 singles matches already.
All I know is that this match didn't come off, at least for me. This match didn't come off as well as I would have liked it to. Is it nice to see Charlotte back? The answer is yes. It is. I'm very happy to see her back. She looks great, and hopefully we'll get, listen, we're gonna get great matches from her. That's almost like a standard norm for her. It's all a matter that, again, when you have that type of star back on your roster, you put that piece back on the board. It may take more. It's going to take up more resources that the other girls underneath now that were getting a little more feature time and maybe developing certain things, they may not get the same attention paid to them, and ultimately it's going. And again, this goes back to what I spoke about, several videos back about WWE having a very, very good and talented women's roster on an overall. It's just a matter that some people either don't see it or may not appreciate it because WWE does not do a good enough job of presenting all of these women as equals within the different levels. They do really great at the top, but once you get off that top tier, it quickly disintegrates in terms of the attention to detail and all these little things that make the division work and make these talents special. So
yeah, I think they've done a good job of letting their undeniable stars, like the top 6 girls.
Yeah, the top stars are always treated.
In the last 2 years, they've at least let them get over. They didn't stop and start with them. They kind of did, but it was okay. They gave Bayley a long run with the title,
and they gave Bayley a long time to discover her voice as a heel. And when she found
and they didn't give up. They
didn't give up on her. They kept it.
Yes, and
there was a belief in Bayley, and it paid dividends because she's done a fantastic job.
It paid off. So their top 6 girls, including I'm gonna include Ronda and Becky. In the last 2 years, their top 6, I think 6 of them for sure, are booked damn near like as good as you can.
I mean, it's weird
It's
because
adding people to the group that's the problem. Is
well,
how do
well,
we get the rest of the girls to jump in and meet these main event girls?
the thing is when you take a look at Lana in that storyline with Nia Jax, and when you look at SmackDown, what they're doing with Carmella right now, working with Sasha Banks, we're kind of seeing that again. Whether we for lack of a better term, whether we appreciate it or not, it's a different perspective because of how, again, when people have been poorly booked for a very long time, you to reprogram your audience to now look at these people as something other than what they've been for, however long they were prior to that. That as long as it took you guys to, for lack of a better term, bury people, it's going to take you just as long to elevate them back up. So that's really the lesson to be taken from that.
All right, so you brought it up. We had Sasha versus Carmella, which I thought was a really, really good match. And it didn't bother me or give me a headache like some of the other matches. Not with the performances, again, it's with some logic and some storyline, some loopholes. I think what people didn't necessarily like about this pairing is that they're so similar. Even their hair flowed in a similar way, and they speak in a similar way, and they have a similar attitude. And that's probably what was kind of making it weird. But at the end of the day, the bell to bell right here, if this is the payoff we got, I liked it. I thought this was Carmella's best match that I can remember of her career. Sasha continues to show that she's one of the best workers in the world, point blank, man or woman. She can work and she can bring people up to her level, which is really, really impressive. Yeah, so I'm impressed with Sasha. The one thing I'll say about Sasha is this feud kind of shined the light on how much Sasha comes off as a heel, which is fine. I like that she has her character, and if she has heel tendencies, that's fine. If she comes off with a little bit of too much of an attitude, that's fine. But you got to give her those moments to go, look, this is why I'm a babyface. Something heroic or whatever, standing up for people, whatever it is, you got to go, look, this is why Sasha's the babyface. This is why Carmella's the heel. Because if you just let them talk and go back and forth to each other and they're just bashing each other, they both come off as heels to me. It's like, oh, they're just arguing and they and they have similar attitudes. And it's like, I'm okay with that, but I still need Sasha to be the hero of the story, And I'd like to see with Sasha, whenever she's feuding with someone like Carmella, show me why Sasha is the heel. I'm the babyface. She's not a babyface just because she feuds with heels. That's not good enough.
Well, okay, I understand where you're coming from. I do. The thing regarding this particular program that is a little weird is when you do look at them. Yes, they're both similarly sized. A lot of their presentation, again, because both of these women, when they walk down the street, they're both beautiful women and they look like models. So yes, they're both fantastic athletes, and in the case of Sasha Banks, is probably, is a 5-tool in-ring performer. Carmella has improved by leaps and bounds, although she's not there yet, but she has made vast improvements. And the thing is, working with somebody like Sasha Banks is only going to make Carmella better. When I see this match, I think part of the reason why Sasha Banks doesn't come off as a real babyface here is, and this is going to sound really messed up, but the thing about it is that Carmella doesn't come across as enough of a threat. Carmella, when you look at Carmella and you look at her and you look at her presentation and you stand her next to Sasha Banks, you're gonna have the prejudice of saying we've basically watched Sasha Banks over the last 7 or 8 years grow up from a little girl into a grown woman into this megastar within the WWE system, and is, one of the best wrestlers in the world, male or female. And we look at Carmella, and Carmella's still in that stage where she's trying to find herself. I think this particular iteration of Carmella is actually very good. I think that when I look at Carmella, this is not going to be the first time somebody has said this, but it comes across as Sunny 2.0, that Carmella has a lot of the charisma and the presentation that Tammy Sytch had back in the mid 90s as Sunny, with the exception that Sunny never wrestled and Carmella does. And Carmella can get a lot of heat by talking, and she is pretty and she is athletic. And working with Sasha Banks, she did have a good match. The thing is that when you take a look at the overall scheme, you look at Sasha Banks, and she has a resume over the last 5, 6, 7 years that has just been top-notch matches left and right. And Carmella, although she has been featured and she has had her moments, it's been start and stop with her, very much so. And I think the WWE, they have big things planned for her, and they want it to work. Do I think that elevating her to a championship match with Sasha Banks this quickly, does it make sense? For my flavor, no, because at the end of the day, you kind of already know what the end result is going to be. Although when they told the story of the match, there were moments where I believe that Carmella was actually going to win. And there were certain moments in the match I was like, oh my God, Carmella is actually going to win the belt. So that's good storytelling, because even in a defeat, Carmella still looks good. And the whole idea is now is that even though she submitted to Sasha Banks, let's see where this goes. Let's see where the next iteration of it is, because again, Carmella on her own is no threat to Sasha Banks physically, meaning it's not like Carmella is bigger or stronger or more imposing or has a gang. She has the butler persona, but of course in WWE you can't have a man strike a woman. It would make more sense if she had a Nia Jax or a Tamina or somebody, an imposing female that could be her bodyguard, who can then put the boots to Sasha Banks, and then she's acting as the enforcer for her. With the guy, it doesn't work the same, because that dude's been on TV for a month, and all 4 weeks Sasha Banks has kicked the piss out of him. So if all he's doing is being the heater for Carmella, it doesn't seem to work very well, because it still seems like Sasha Banks is bigger, stronger, tougher, and we always expect her to beat Carmella. If all things being equal, 99 times out of 100, Carmella is going to lose to Sasha Banks. And that's the reason why it's like, even though the match was really good, and I do agree with you, it's, for my flavor, by far Carmella's best in-ring match. The element of why you believe that Sasha Banks doesn't come across as a babyface in this particular pairing is because Carmella as a whole in her presentation does not come across as enough of a threat to Sasha Banks to make her a believable babyface in this instance.
Okay. Well, I do think Carmella did kind of put herself in a nice little position now, where if she can get something good to bite on,
well, yeah,
she can probably keep herself in the main event picture.
Yes, she
The
can.
character is good enough, and she's proved that she can have a match that's worthy of a main event spot. She just did it, so that's good for her.
Now the test for Carmella moving forward is going to be when she has to work with somebody who is not Sasha Banks, Bayley, Charlotte, those types. Because wrestling against those women, Carmella is going to be elevated because she's working with the star. Now let's see, and of course, is she ready to do that? No, she's not. But let's see in the development, let's say that now she got knocked down, now she's going to probably work with the underneath girls, and let's see if she can get herself over working with somebody who's not necessarily over herself, and see if that can happen. That's the next elevation for her, to see if she can sustain her spot that she apparently has earned now with this program that she's worked with Sasha Banks.
Okay. We had Drew versus AJ for the WWE title in a TLC match. AJ, of course, was flanked by Omos, or however you pronounce his name.
Yeah, no, you got it right. Almost.
Omos, yeah. This match athletically was really, really fun and really good, and the stunts were great, and the action was great. But you can't let things that look stupid happen. And I'm gonna tell you right now, what looks so stupid to me.
There were a few things.
Well, the thing that bothered me is, and this always bothered me, is this is not just them. This is not just WWE. This is kind of a wrestling thing. This is a match that is no disqualification. No one's getting disqualified no matter what they do, unless they pull out a gun and shoot a civilian. This match,
and there are none.
Exactly. Unless you
are no civilians.
You can even punch the ref in the face, and the match will continue.
That would be my move if I was a heel. Punch the ref in the mouth in a no DQ match. Oh yeah.
You should always punch the ref in the mouth. If you're losing, go punch the ref in the mouth, so that no one sees when you lose the match. There's no evidence. The ref can't call it if he can't see it.
Yeah, you're right about that.
But yeah, so you have Drew versus AJ, right? And the match starts with Drew pretty much taking 75-80% of the match in the beginning. Right in front of this big monster. Right in front of him, right in his face. Coming off of they're on SmackDown? They're on Raw. The week before that, they pretty much told us it's gonna be Drew against AJ, against Omos, against Miz, against Morrison. So they told you we can cheat, so we're gonna cheat. Omos did not cheat. Talk about a good guy. This guy did not get involved at all. There's no explanation why he wouldn't get involved. It makes no sense why he would let Drew McIntyre beat the piss out of AJ. Now, if they would have started the way they kind of did the middle of the match, where AJ took over and started beating up on Drew's leg, and Omos is like, all right, it's all good. I'm just going to let you do your thing, AJ. No, this was 10 to 12 minutes of Drew beating the piss out of AJ. AJ bumping and flying and bumping and like all over the place for Drew. Almost does nothing. He did nothing. He didn't look at them, which is fine, whatever. But they didn't explain why he didn't do nothing.
Well, here's the thing. You're right about that. So I'm not this retort is not an argument against your point. It's just probably to give an explanation. I believe that the reason why WWE chose to not have Omos interfere in the match and basically be a spectator is because, one, he's probably so green that his offense would look like shit for a guy that big to try to get offense on the WWE champion. And number two is that if he does get offense on the WWE champion, and knowing the way that McIntyre has been presented, he's almost would be getting a receipt before the second bell in that match. And if he doesn't know how to give offense, he probably is no good at taking offense. And the thing about it is that then you would kill the mystique of Omos altogether. So what you do is that you basically don't present him at all, and just take it as AJ Styles is clearly the smaller man getting thrown around like a rag doll by the much larger, much stronger, and equally experienced guy. Because it's not like Drew McIntyre's big and strong, but he's dumb. You know, he's just as experienced as AJ in the ring. So it makes sense there. That's the reason why I don't think that Omos was used, because I don't think that it's not going to be a positive. It's not going to be a positive in any way, shape, or form to use him, knowing that the way that they present Drew, WWE presents Drew, he's going to get his receipt before the end of that match. Omos is going to be laying flat on his back, and you don't want that.
Oh no, I know why Omos should not get involved, but that's not my problem. You put him on TV as AJ's bodyguard. He needs to be AJ's bodyguard. You put them in a match that you did not have to put them in. The stakes are not high enough for them to be in a TLC match.
I agree with you. I don't think this match needed to be a TLC match. If there was any match that should have been a quote unquote normal regular match, that one was it.
Yeah, so you force yourself again. You're bit in the ass by your stipulations and your the titles of your pay-per-views that you feel you need to stick to. When you don't, you can do whatever you want, like we've talked about in the past. Now you have this guy out there who looks like an idiot because AJ's not pissed at him. AJ's not gonna. Well, I would fire him. I would fire if this were real. If I'm in a fight in the street and I'm with one of my boys and I fight somebody twice my size and they beat my ass, right? And if we start off one-on-one and it's all good, and then all of a sudden he starts beating my ass, beating me, I'm not gonna have to say a word. That person I'm with is probably gonna help me. Without me saying anything and without me paying them and without them being my official bodyguard, they're gonna probably jump in. I've seen people jump in for less.
Listen, I'm not disagreeing with your point. I'm not. It's just a matter that, you know, in that situation, if, you know, again, if AJ let's say that, and I'm going to say this, you know, and it's going to come across like I'm taking a pot shot, but if this was the Miz, let's say the Miz was in AJ's position and Omos was the Miz's bodyguard, then you could see that Omos needs to get involved. And it's, now mind you, it has nothing to do because the Miz and AJ are about the same size. Maybe Miz is slightly larger. What I'm saying is that the way that they're presented, meaning AJ Styles, even in that situation, in the situation that he was in, getting beat up by McIntyre, you as the fan know that at some point in this match, AJ is going to figure it out. Like you have a confidence that at some point he's going to figure it out. With the Miz's persona, he is portrayed as a guy that runs his mouth a lot, and he acts like a chicken shit heel. And when you see a match like that, you would think that for the Miz, he would either have to cheat or pray that McIntyre makes a mistake, which apparently, you know, it'll happen, you know, at a spot in the match. But that's kind of where I would say that with Omos, I get your point. You're not wrong. You're not wrong about this, but at the same time, it's a matter of like, if I know that that I want to save Omos for lack of a better term, I would rather have him disappear into the background, knowing that just AJ and McIntyre alone is already enough, and I don't necessarily need Omos, even though later on in the match, Miz and Morrison get involved. So they become AJ's heaters, even though they're not necessarily there to help him. They're there to help themselves, you know, and try to get Miz the title. And, you know, that went sideways, thank goodness. But I get your point. You're not wrong here. I get your point.
Yes. They booked themselves into a situation where they have this big 7-foot guy right in front of the camera, pretty much allowing the person that he's supposed to protect to get their ass kicked in a match that nothing will happen if he gets involved.
Correct.
No bad will come. And I'm not saying that you need to force Omos into this match. I'm saying you booked yourself in this situation, now book yourself out of it. Not by doing something that makes no sense. AJ could have easily said, look, they used him for one spot. Omos still got involved for one spot, and that's when Miz. So Miz is a bigger threat than Drew. When Miz is about to cash in,
I think it was Morrison, wasn't it?
No, Miz was about to get the thing.
The
title.
He got in the ring.
Finally, now he gets in. He brings him down and he throws him out the ring.
He threw him onto a table, right?
Onto a table.
And he placed him. He didn't even throw him. He softly placed him.
He softly dropped him into the table, which is fine. But
no, it's not. It's not. A guy that big. Listen, a guy that big should be able to make it look good, and Miz, with his level of experience, should be able to guide him well enough to be able to take that bump, because what it does is that it looks ridiculous.
Well, obviously, no one told him because he did it again on Monday, the same exact spot.
Yeah, I know. Silly.
Either way, it is so easy to go. AJ can go because of Drew, because Drew is a babyface. The babyface should not be dumb. The babyface should be smart and heroic. He should be like, hey, by the way, AJ, it's going to be crazy enough out there. If you're not a coward, leave your boy in the back. And AJ could at first be like, nah, no. But egg him on because he's an heel, he's an egomaniac who can't control his temper, and you fire him up. And then even though AJ has a bigger plan and almost can still come out at the end to make the save, but you make it look at least like you weren't going to bring him out. And there's a billion other ways to do it.
No, that makes sense.
So to just go, forget it, we're not going to do anything, we're not going to solve this problem that we made, I think it's so lazy. It's just lazy. But either way, let's talk about the other very similar situation, the other TLC match.
No, we will. We haven't finished up with this.
Oh yeah, well,
Miz and Morrison get involved.
Miz and Morrison are gonna get involved. Miz is gonna cash in, which is fine, and he gets close. Look, all this action to me was fun. It was all fun, but I was so distracted with the almost situation.
Listen, I thought that a lot of the action was fun in this match. However, I don't think that this match should have taken place in the way that in this construct. This match could have easily been a one-on-one match where where AJ and Drew have a regular match. They kill it for 20 plus minutes. Then in the end, AJ takes advantage of McIntyre, puts him. Yes, it's the exact same. It's the exact same construct that has always happened. Babyface beats the heel. Heel kicks the babyface's ass, leaves him laying. The heel from the back comes out with the briefcase. They try to cash it in, and whatever gimmick they can do. Yes, they've done it a million times, but for this construct, it works better because I think that all the gimmicks in this match actually distracted because the McIntyre and Styles can work fantastic one-on-one matches, and I think that the TLC stipulation actually did more harm than good. These guys are tremendous professionals. They know what they're doing, and they made it work. Miz and Morrison getting involved, okay, fine, because they have been including them into the stories, so it's not foreign, but at the same time, not necessary. So that's really the point. I think that this match would have been better had it just been a regular one-on-one match for the title. Because then in the next match that we'll talk about here with Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens, knowing that it was a ladder match or a TLC match for the Universal title, it makes sense when you have only one of those matches be a gimmick match versus having both of them, because when both of them are gimmick matches, then neither one of them gets over the way that they should, because you're comparing them against each other, and ultimately at times they'll cancel each other out.
Yeah, and also you have the problem of it's a match where no one gets in trouble for doing something illegal. So now you should be forced to do something like have your people get involved if you have people. And when we know you have people, like Roman has Jay.
Yeah, but that and we'll get to that and how ridiculous that this story was.
But either way, Miz it fails to cash in, which is fine. It doesn't, you don't need to get I prefer that if you win the Money in the Bank, it's with a purpose, but clearly they had no idea what to do with this Money in the Bank. They put it on Otis, they changed their mind. They put it on Miz, they changed their mind. Or maybe their plan was for Miz never to win it, to win the title. So they just needed to get it off Otis because they didn't want him to look like an ass when he loses. So whatever. I mean, it is what it is. Like I said, the action was fun, but because of the little loopholes in the story, you'll soon forget about it, and you move on to something else. And it sucks because this is Drew and AJ's first encounter ever,
and they're both fantastic talents, both of them.
The fact that this is this is where what there's no love in WWE. It feels like it's like, how do you not know that this is their first encounter? How do you not cherish and really, really, put it out there that this is their first encounter? Build it up as this huge, huge dream match. It's like you don't know what you have. It's like, how do you not know this? And then their first match ever is TLC. Why is AJ even having TLC matches at his age? Not that he can't perform in a great way, but
that doesn't. That has not. His age has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the story you're trying to tell, and the story that they're trying to tell. This match is not necessary for the first act of the story, because you can tell so many more. You can tell so many more stories, and then if you need to have a gimmick match as a blow off, you can do this at another time. But this is more a gimmick that needed a match instead of a match that needed a gimmick, and that's the reason why it didn't. For me, as much as I'm a huge fan of AJ Styles, and I'm a huge fan of Drew McIntyre's work over the last year or so. He's been fantastic. But this was the gimmick needed the match, so they put that match in that gimmick of the TLC. But my preference would be I wouldn't have done it. Just have a straight match, regular wrestling match. Would have worked out much better, I think.
I'm a person that likes to go back and find little gems of matches on pay-per-views, from guys like a Cesaro or Tyson Kidd or Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles, or even Cody when he was there. Like I would go, you know what? I like this guy. There has to be a good singles match somewhere. And I see way too often that it's so difficult to find the singles match because they don't exist. They don't exist. It's like every big match, if you're not a main event, like literally the main event guy, like Roman, you could find a shit ton of singles matches that are epic and have 20 minutes on a pay-per-view. You cannot find that with a lot of guys because the mid-card guys or the high upper mid-card, almost main event guys, they're put in these gimmick matches all the time. It's always a gimmick match, multi-man matches. It's like every pay-per-view is a gimmick because you named them after gimmick matches. If I'm WWE, I'm going back to the drawing board. I'm going, okay, what are our most popular, pay-per-view names? Because it's just a pay-per-view name. You have your big four, whatever, or big five, you want, which Money in the Bank, even though it's a pay-per-view that would always get a lot of attention, I'm sorry, you don't need to book yourself in that corner. Like,
nope.
You own all these properties, all these names of events. Go back and find whatever is going to be fun and interesting and whatever you can sink your teeth into.
First of all, Money in the Bank needs to be brought back and made a match that only happens once a year at WrestleMania or SummerSlam. They need to bring back the King of the Ring. I think that's a tournament. That tournament format would make a lot of sense to do it once a year, with the idea that the people that are in that tournament are people you've been building up over the prior 6 to 8 months. And when they get into that tournament, the stakes are very high because basically the winner of that tournament then it's basically the same stipulation from the Royal Rumble winner to WrestleMania. Well, the King of the Ring winner gets the same stipulation in the SummerSlam. It's just like that's how you get there. And you could be able to tell that story, but the thing is that for the people who are in the Royal Rumble that have good performances but are not the eventual winner, those are the people who you can bubble up underneath. So when the King of the Ring comes up in late spring, early summer, you have that tournament with those people, have them compete against each other. You get the one guy out of there who you are like, all right, this is the guy for SummerSlam. And you start building it up that way. There's a lot of things they can do. I'm not a big fan of, WWE having their pay-per-views based on the gimmicks, because what ends up happening is they paint themselves into corners that they shouldn't be in, because then it's just like you feel like you have to make matches and put matches in the stipulation matches, into the gimmick matches that you don't need to have. So yeah, that's definitely something that has to change.
And it's even worse when they book week to week. if you can plan it out and you guys were booking 6 months in advance or 3 months in advance and you knew, okay, in 3 months we have TLC. We need to have something that's worthy of a TLC match. Instead of going, okay, whoever's our champions, they just have to have TLC matches because that's the name of the pay-per-view. That doesn't make any sense.
No, it certainly doesn't. I wouldn't even have the show happen that way. My thought process would be like, no, I wouldn't even have the TLC pay-per-view at all.
No, me either.
What you do is you can have a TLC match. What you can do is you could take that pay-per-view, like those matches, and you move them to the Extreme Rules pay-per-view. If you want that to be the one match where you can do the TLC matches and you can do all those crazy gimmick matches on that night. But then it can't be if you have 8 matches on the card, 7 of them are gimmick matches. Like, no. If you have 8 matches, you may have maybe 3 or 4 gimmick matches. You might have a regular grudge match. Then you got to have your championship matches. That if the championship matches merit the gimmick, fine, do it. If it doesn't, you don't do it. It's just that simple.
Yeah, so anyway, Roman and Jay. So look,
Roman and Kevin Owens.
Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens against Roman. Now, this is what I've noticed is usually if Paul Heyman's involved, there will be some level of trying to make sense out of things. Sometimes it might go too far, it might get too crazy, or but there is some thought, there is some love in the booking, at least. And you can see that there's some thought. Whether it works or not, it's whatever, it's subjective, but
yes,
at least you see that someone goes, okay, how do we get to this? How do we get to that? So right away they establish Jay's gonna get involved, which makes sense. Why would I not get involved? There's no rules. I'm not getting in trouble for this. I'm coming out to help Roman right away. And he does.
Mm-hmm.
And what do? KO takes him out big time. Another thing that kind of makes sense is that if it was a one-on-one match between Jay and KO hit him with that same offense, eventually Jay would get up. That's just what we're programmed to see. So yes, he would get. I would not like to see him get up so many times, because then it was overkill. So it was a little bit overthinking going on. But get up a second time to ruin it at the end would have been, nice. Instead of getting up what felt like 5 times. But at least they go, okay, we need to take Jay out of the match. So KO hits him with big offense to take him out. It wasn't permanent, but at least it goes, okay, here's the first 10 minutes that we're going to be alone because I need to take Jay out. And I need to tell a story and not be lazy. I need to tell a story to get Jay out of the match. Because if not, it makes sense that Jay will get involved and these two guys would just jump me for the entire match. And that's what makes sense. It makes sense if you have a friend, for you and your friend to come out and beat up the guy who has no friends. You're guaranteed to win because it's not against the rules. You're not even a heel for doing it.
Well, you listen. You're not wrong. The one thing that I didn't like and actually took me out of the match with Jey Uso was this. The first time he interfered in the match, KO was expecting it. KO put him down. That was brilliant. Mm-hmm. Here's where the problem lies. He beat Jey Uso up to the point, and forget about the chair shots when they hit him in the back. It's when he actually did he Pillmanizing his leg, putting the chair and messing up his ankle, and essentially, quote unquote, breaking his leg. Mm-hmm. That should have been the end of Jey Uso in this contest. Once you go there, he's out. Stage left, you do not return. Period. Because 8 minutes later, 10 minutes later, when he comes in and he's hobbling on one foot, I'm like, we're done. We're done. The way, if you're going to do that spot and quote unquote break Jey Uso's leg, is because the other twin has to be ready to come in and do, instead of it being 2-on-1, it's now 3-on-1. Mm-hmm. That's how it makes sense. Since they didn't do that and Jey Uso kept constantly interfering the second time, the third time, the fourth time, after a while, it's like, okay, your premise is correct about, hey, it's not against the rules. It could be 2 against 1. It's a handicap match. The problem is that when KO put him down the first time, he put him down in such a way that Jey Uso should have been exit stage left and you don't return. That's the problem. If he would have done, backdrop, one or two chair shots, throw him against the barricade and then toss him out, on the other side, okay, that can put him down for 5 minutes and then he can come back. Because reasonably you can believe that, yeah, he's had enough time to recover. But once you do the pillmanizing of the leg and you basically do everything but shoot him, he shouldn't come back. Period. And then when Roman Reigns was essentially beating the piss out of Kevin Owens, and it was well done. He was beating up Kevin Owens, and Kevin Owens just kept saying, like, nope, I'm not. You're gonna have, he's literally his own words. You're gonna have to kill me. You're gonna have to kill me for me to not win this match. They did a good job when it looked like, all right, KO's been getting the piss beaten out of him for 80% of this match. Is like at some point he's got to get some offense in. Once Roman Reigns went to spear and missed him, and the whole timekeeper section exploded, I was like, all right, good. And then Kevin Owens went to work and he hit all his big moves. And he got with, he had the belt, literally had the belt in his hand. Like, obviously didn't take it down, but he had the belt in his hand. All of those spots are great. The problem is that Jey Uso was the conduit, the one who's interfering. At that point, we need a third person. That would make more sense if a third person now interferes. If it presumably Jimmy Uso would be the right guy to do it, but if he's not clear to do it yet, is there another member of the Samoan dynasty? Could it be Naomi? Could it be Tamina? Could it be somebody else that we as the audience know is part of the family and would be willing to interfere? Maybe not on Roman's behalf, but maybe on Jey Uso's behalf. These are all little nuanced things that you can do. It might sound silly, but if you're not ready to add that layer in, I just thought that the way that Jey Uso got his ass whooped, he should have been out of the match and not come back at all. And the thing is that he kept coming back multiple times. And what it basically did was it tells you, unfortunately, as the audience member, it tells you this is fake. And the things that they're doing to each other are physically very real. So when the ultimate selling of an injury or of an injury, pseudo injury angle doesn't do it, especially the pillmanizing of the leg, because that's something that in wrestling we've already been conditioned. You get hit with that movie, your night is done. You don't come back from that, at least not on that night. You've already been conditioned to that, and Jey Uso basically was Superman on that particular night. I mean, Roman Reigns, should have given him one half of the title. They could have raised it together. But again, it was a fun match. That was a match that the gimmick actually worked because of the fact that the way that they've been working the chairs into the storytelling they've been doing over the last several weeks prior made sense for them to have this gimmick match. The only thing that really took me out of it was the fact that Jey Uso kept coming back and interfering as much as he did, because it actually made it look fake, and it took me out of the match.
All right, we had the New Day versus the Hurt Business, with the Hurt Business actually going over.
Yes, good. Which
it's fine because there's really nothing going on with the tag teams. It's like the tag team division is like so dead. It's like, well, it doesn't hurt anyone to put the titles on the Hurt Business.
I mean, listen, I'm full disclosure, I actually didn't see this match. I actually did miss this match, but to see the Hurt Business go over, I'm like, that's great. Because with all due respect to the New Day have been tag team champions, off and on for the better part of the last decade. I mean, they've just been champions almost always. If they're not the champions at a set moment, they're always chasing. So I think it's good for the Hurt Business because the Hurt Business has been on fire. They've been doing tremendous work, and it makes sense to put the belts on Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander. The Hurt Business is over. They're heels. They can be able to work with, either established teams like the New Day or makeshift teams. They could be able to do a lot of good as the champions, and hopefully in their position, knowing that they're over, they can work with, with other teams that, we may yawn at them, but working with the Hurt Business, they might be able to get a nice rub and get over. So it makes sense. I was ecstatic to see that they won the tag team, that the Hurt Business won the tag team titles. It makes all the sense in the world. They really need to be the champions. It makes sense.
Yeah, hopefully they take the opportunity to turn those belts black and gold, not the old bronze color.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Because the Hurt Business colors are black.
Gold. Yeah, actual black and gold. Let's get on that. the great
WWE, book it. Book it.
Get it done. Get the big black and gold belts.
Book it.
Okay, I guess all we have left is the main event, right? Yep. Randy Orton versus The Fiend. Look, for what it was, I did not think this was bad. I'm open to whatever. And the one thing I will say is that when you do have matches where you can win without pinning the person, it's a good opportunity to beat somebody who should never be beat. The Fiend should never lose, ever. In my opinion, he should never lose. So if you're gonna beat him, I'm not gonna say setting him on fire is the way to do it, but having a match where you don't have to pin him it's when you beat him. It's the only time you do beat him. Yeah. Look, I mean, it is what it is. They set somebody on fire. It was fun, I guess. Yeah. So I don't know what the rules of his character are in this universe. He can't be killed, no matter what you do to him. Yep.
I'm gonna try to be fair, but this basically goes back to the thing that I said a long time ago about the Fiend. Less is more. If this is a way to get him off of TV for the next little while, do it. The thing with the Fiend is that you're right. His persona is a persona that should never be beaten. But he's also a persona that should not be on TV every single week. Because when you put him on every single week, first of all, you lessen the importance of having him on, number one. Number two is that you quickly realizes that you run out of creative stories that you can do with him that don't necessarily make you as an audience member feel dumb, meaning that every person that works with the Fiend is somehow scared or loses their noodle around him. The story with Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt is it's a full circle storyline because obviously from years past when Randy Orton was a member of the Wyatt family for a very brief period where he was teaming with Bray Wyatt, then he turned on him, burned down his house, for whatever purposes, killed Sister Abigail, in the fire. And then now Bray Wyatt turned into the Fiend, does all this other stuff. Then we go back to Randy Orton. He reminds him of all this jazz. And they had the match. And what does Randy Orton do? He burns the Fiend. And just obviously burns a dummy, burned him to a crisp, which was really the stupid thing, right? You could easily be able to burn the Fiend, to have Bray Wyatt when his jacket burned, he goes in, takes the RKO. This match was obviously recorded. So what do? You shut off the lights, and then you go to a situation where the Fiend disappears and he can just laugh. but you don't do the scene where Randy Orton burns an obvious dummy because it's so dumb. It's just dumb. It makes no sense. I understand what they're trying to do is get Randy Orton over as, you know, this sinister character and all this other jazz, but I'm like, really? Really? You know, to me, it's like when I saw this, I'm like, it feels like I'm watching a horror movie. And I think that's obviously what they're going for with Bray Wyatt, with this Fiend character. It's a horror movie. The thing is that there's only so many times, you know, again, like when you see the Friday the 13th movies or the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, you know, I always laugh and I tell people, if you've seen one, you've seen them all. Because yes, they're all different in their own way, but basically the story is the same. You're trying to defeat an entity that cannot be defeated. And the thing is that when you think they're done, they'll write, you know, the writers will come up with another story to bring the persona back. I don't like the fact that in this instance they're taking that element and bringing it into pro wrestling, because in pro wrestling, those types of things, you got to be very careful how far you can go with them. Some personas and some personalities and characters can get away with that, aka meaning like the Undertaker, you know, maybe Kane, you know, Paul Bearer, God rest his soul, and maybe Bray Wyatt might be in that category. But this was really, really egregious and stupid because it's obvious the way that it was done is like, you obviously know it's a dummy. They're not even trying to hide it. So you don't have a shock like, oh my God, you laugh at it and you roll your eyes and you're like, seriously, man?
Well,
this is the last thing.
I thought the dummy looked really good, but they stood on it too long.
The point being is that when you're going to do something like that, you have to take great care to camouflage it as much as you can. But when you focus on it, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that dummy was probably 30 pounds lighter than Bray Wyatt actually is, meaning no gut, no nothing. It's like those are little things that you got to be able to understand. If you're going to do it, you know, I don't want to say, hey, if you're going to do it right, but you got to get all the way there. And sometimes these are the little things that are not cared for as much as they should. And when you focus on it too much, what you're doing is, again, it's the same thing they did with the Seth Rollins and Rey Mysterio with the eye for an eye match. Really, a stipulation like that, or you got to poke a guy's eye out. A stipulation, you got to burn somebody. Hey, come on, man, that's not pro wrestling. I don't know what the hell that is, but it ain't pro wrestling. And those are the types of things. Those are just things that I don't want to see WWE continue going down that path, because what you're essentially doing is that the more you have to do crap like that, more people are going to be turned off by it, more people are going to walk away, and then you have little to no chance of rehabbing some of these people, because now once you do these stupid, ridiculous things, that is something that's on record, and you can redeem it, but you don't forget it, kind of thing. And all it takes is for them to make one screw up, and then we're right back to this point, because that's what people are going to remember. So you got to be really careful about that. Randy Orton is one of the biggest stars that they have. He shouldn't be doing this stuff, because if you're going to have anybody do something like that, it should be a baby face, you know, that goes over the edge and has to do something extreme. I understand why they did it with Orton, because it's a story arc, you know, that goes years and years, makes sense. But the fact is that Randy Orton is a heel doing something to another heel, and then when Bray Wyatt comes back in the Fiend, am I supposed to cheer for him? You understand what I'm saying? Like, it's just there's just so much ass backwards stuff with this that, again, I don't want to see the Fiend on TV for a while. I know that they showed Alexa Bliss on Raw, and she's basically just like, you know, kind of telling Randy, hey, he's on his way back, and I'm like, it's the following day, and they're doing it. So
yeah, that's another thing. They no-sold the fact that somebody got burned.
Listen, nobody came to help. Nobody came to stop it.
And the next day, nobody cared. No one
No one is scared out of their pants to when Randy Orton comes down to the ring. So again, these are all these little things that are just not focused on. And listen, as far as I'm concerned, these are things that I would prefer. My preference is that WWE just doesn't do them anymore. Just don't. If you're gonna do something with Bray Wyatt, figure something else out. But please, no more of these stupid Firefly Funhouse matches. No more of this garbage. Do something else.
All right, it was okay, so that's TLC. Was there anything in 2020, since the year's pretty much over, that stood out to you, good or bad? Any takeaways?
I mean, I think the biggest positive, obviously, that I would take from 2020 is just the fact that pro wrestling was even presented. The fact that WWE was able to figure it out, AEW was able to figure it out. Other wrestling promotions that are television based products, they had to take a bit of a timeout. In the names, Ring of Honor, MLW, the NWA, they had to take a pause. The emergence, for lack of a better term, the emergence of Impact Wrestling, meaning they were able to take advantage of the released talent from the WWE this past summer, that they were able to acquire some of those talents and, bolster their roster and do some good things. So just in general, the fact that wrestling was able to even be done, and the fact that we get to talk about it, and we get to sit here and watch these shows, and for better or for worse, we're able to talk about them. I think that's a major positive. If I had to probably take a negative, I would probably say that knowing that there are no fans, the companies the companies are stretching in terms of trying to provide a different type of entertainment in wrestling. And this is, and I'm talking primarily WWE and AEW. The risk that they're taking in terms of some of the things that they've done have not always worked. And meaning, this match we just talked about with Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt, that's a perfect example of a nonsense type thing. Other examples, obviously the Money in the Bank match that WWE did over the summer, which I thought was just ha-ha comedy that got nobody over. The Stadium Stampede match that AEW produced, which I thought was hot garbage.
I thought that was great, though.
Good for you. I thought that was hot garbage, but things like that, when talent, when companies are trying to, stretch the envelope in terms of doing different things, it kind of makes me look forward to whenever we can go back to having live crowds in the arenas, because yes, the companies are going to continue, stretching the envelope and doing different things, but the fact that they have live people there is, we'll be able to have some kind of a construct to the shows that can resemble more of a pro wrestling show, and not necessarily trying to do movies or these cinematic type things a little too much. And of course, we had great things. I mean, obviously WrestleMania, when Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair, notwithstanding the winner of the match, the Boneyard match between The Undertaker and AJ Styles, which is probably the closest thing to a perfect representation of what a cinematic match would look like. It was really, really good. So there's a lot of positives, man. And really what I'm looking forward to in 2021 is at some point being able to go back and seeing fans, like live people at the shows. Because that's if there's any one thing that we've noticed this year that is glaring, is the lack of the audience. Takes a lot away from the shows, because the things that are really good seem less good, and the things that might be bad, but with a live audience might be passable, just looks that much worse. So, really, there's been a lot of good, and I applaud all the, I applaud the companies and the wrestlers for really working very hard under very treacherous conditions to be able to provide us entertainment. But I really look forward to seeing fans back in the arenas because they're a huge part of what makes the wrestling shows exciting and entertaining, particularly for the folks watching it on television.
Yeah, and of course, with this whole situation and no fans, people had to work differently. People had to experiment. People had to try new things, and their work had to get better. It just had to. There's no reactions. Everyone is just staring at you, and there's no noise. Your work it needed to be great. It needed to be as good as it could possibly be. I imagine that everyone who was busting their ass in 2020 and going out there and still having matches, that in 2021 is probably a way better performer. And who knows what that looks like even if we get to 60-70% capacity at some of these arenas. I imagine you're gonna have a rabid fan base that's ready to cheer and boo and is very, very excited. There's gonna be a shit ton of opportunity to get over, because the fans will be there and want you to get over just because they missed, being there. So let's see if how these companies take advantage of that, because you still have to know that it's coming. You have to know that you're gonna get a fan base that wants to, help get people over, pretty much wants to cheer for people. So how do you book knowing that? Do you have a plan? Do not take it for granted and go, okay, it's just business as usual. No, this is special. It's a big deal. AEW has had fans little by little, so WWE has had 0 fans. Main roster WWE has 0 fans in attendance. That's a big deal if they get 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 fans out of nowhere.
Well,
you have to take advantage.
I mean, I'll say this. I mean, I know right now that the WWE's in Tropicana Field, they're out in Tampa now doing the Thunderdome thing. You wouldn't really know the difference because there's no visible difference in the television presentation, which is something that's admirable, but at the same time has to change. Because for WWE, one of the things that you want to be able to do is dress up the arenas a little differently so that the audience can see like, wow, this is different. Like it's visually different to the audience. But yeah, I mean, definitely when it comes to the idea of having fans, WWE having the virtual fans and then the piped in noise, it's definitely not the same. AEW, for, like I said, for all the criticisms that I have of their product, they have really tried. And I mean, at one time, having the wrestlers out there and just making the noise was probably super innovative. And it was one of the best things about their program because, when you were watching the WWE programming and it was sterile, meaning you just see the wrestlers and the only voices you hear are the commentators and you hear nothing else. It was super sterile and almost depressing a little bit at times when you watch, 3 hours of wrestling and there's like 0 reaction from anybody. And, when you tune into AEW, yeah, it's the wrestlers, but they're live bodies, they're human beings, they're responding. Even if, you could say if it's contrived or genuine, who cares? It's live bodies, they're making noise. And when you look out, you see another human being out there. Mask or no, which hopefully, they all wear their masks at all times, even if it's an outdoor arena. But, really in the following year, when I'm also hoping to see, the emergence of different talents. What I really want to see next year is, very simply put, more good wrestling and less bad wrestling. More reasons for me to watch and enjoy, and just and get to a point where I'm watching the shows and I'm saying, regardless of how the different promotions present their shows and however they want you to believe inside their worlds, you know, how you're supposed to watch, but things that make sense, things that are not tongue-in-cheek, things that are more, you know, that I can be able to suspend disbelief in, truly. I think both sides, particularly not say WWE and AEW, they both have good things that they have, and they also have a lot of things they have to improve on. You know, WWE's is more of a it's a larger issue with WWE because it's such a large organization that it's a slower moving vehicle. But you know, there's a lot of things that WWE has to improve on, and I think it's really just a matter of, you know, giving us the talent is there. It's a matter of giving us real super compelling storylines and doing a good job of building your underneath talent. With AEW, it's a matter of when you're going to introduce talent, make a very concerted effort to introduce them and allow the audience to build a real rapport with them on Dynamite. And I understand that there's not a lot of real estate on that show, but it's a matter of when you're going to make that conscious effort, do not presume that the people that are watching Dynamite are following every piece of programming that AEW does on social media. So you bring a new talent in that I'm watching it and I'm saying, okay, I've never seen this talent before, but you're presenting them as they're like the number 4 or 5 contender. And I'm like, how can they be in the top 5? You're saying, oh, they've wrestled 10 matches already. And I'm like, I'm sure they've all been on Dark. But they're being introduced on Dynamite for the first time. Kind of treat it as such. Give me a reason to care, and then build the rapport, build the relationship to where when they do get to an angle or a title match or whatever it might be, you know, whether I care about it or not is a very subjective thing, or the audience cares about it or not is a very subjective thing, but at least you've done the legwork to introduce them to the audience on the main show.
All right, let's just do some rapid fire, some fun stuff.
Sure.
Give me your MVP for 2020.
Wow, that's
like true MVP.
Dang.
You know, your favorite, not, you know, in your mind.
If I had to say who my MVP is for 2020, I would probably have to say Drew McIntyre. Because Drew McIntyre was a guy that at the beginning of the year in the Royal Rumble was given the major push when not only did he win the Rumble match, but he eliminated Brock Lesnar after Brock basically beat up half the WWE roster in that match. He won the title in the worst of circumstances, meaning instead of getting the major pop in Robert James Stadium in Tampa in front of 90,000 people, he basically had to do it in an empty studio with probably 10 people there, you know, and just the essential workers filming it. He's had to be the WWE champion in COVID times, meaning having to do just as much compelling TV as he possibly can. Excuse me, as much compelling TV as he possibly can, without the benefit of a crowd reaction. He's worked outstanding matches against just about everybody on the WWE roster, and it looks like it's not going to stop anytime soon. A guy like McIntyre is going to benefit greatly, I think, if and when some semblance of a live audience, like real fans, not the NXT workers, or no, like real fans get to be there and watch him. He's going to benefit greatly from it. You know, and the person that probably gets honorable mention from me will be MVP. MVP came in this year, and well, I think last year, I think, you know, he was there in 2019, but for the year of 2020, the work that he's done with the Hurt Business, essentially rehabbing Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, and Cedric Alexander, has been nothing short of amazing. He took 3 extremely talented guys who were floundering and basically going nowhere in the WWE and made them into viable stars, basically rehabbed them. And now Bobby Lashley is the U.S. champion and being treated as a dominant badass. And then you have Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander, who, although they don't win all the time, they probably have a 60-40 record in terms of wins and losses. But being associated with the Hurt Business, and now that they're the Raw Tag Team Champions, it's a huge positive. So I think that I would say the MVP would be Drew McIntyre, and honorable mention would go to MVP and the Hurt Business.
I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna. In my heart, I kind of feel I'm gonna go with Bayley. Me personally, I think I can go Sasha or Bayley, but I feel like Sasha kind of went like this, and I feel like Bayley went like this.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think Bayley and Sasha carried most of WWE programming. They did a lot of cool stuff. They had a lot of great character stuff. Obviously Bayley stuff is kind of came to an end. Now she's like losing every match and whatever. And then she beat Bianca Belair, so I guess they're gonna start again. But I wanted them to slow down with the Sasha Bayley, because I think it needs to be at Mania when they have their blow off. So I think I don't know where that's going, but for 2020, I think they had the great tag team run. You had that growth that Bayley had. Then you had their little feud, which is only in the beginning or in the middle or whatever, because they technically feuded back in the day.
They've been feuding since like 2013.
Yeah, exactly. But for this incarnation, it's in the early stages. But it was, consistently really, really, really good stuff at a time where there wasn't that much good stuff on WWE's programming. Because before Roman got there, I don't know if you had performers that were going out there with. There's a bunch of great performers, but you need the story behind you. You need, not just storylines. You need the matches and you need the opportunities. And they went out there, killed promos. They showed up on multiple shows. They had killer matches.
Correct.
And title reigns. And I thought it was a really, really good year for both of them. How about you give me a breakout star for 2021? Who's going to maybe get their first world title or something like that?
It's weird. I think the first person that pops into my mind, believe it or not, is Darby Allin.
He popped in my mind too.
And the thing is that Darby Allin is already a star within AEW. However, AEW has to have a more concerted effort. I don't want to say that I don't want AEW to dull the edges on him or take away the things that make him unique with his promos and all that other stuff. The thing is, with a guy like Darby Allin, I would say do the things that you're really good at, but you have to minimize your risks. Meaning, things like having somebody stuff you in a body bag full of tacks and then power bomb you off the top rope, you being blind to how you're going to fall onto the stage, shit like that. No. Just if Darby Allin won't say no, somebody has to say no, and they gotta put the clamps on him and say no, you can't do that. He's a guy that I think is going to be a breakout star for AEW. I kind of see the same thing, two other guys within AEW that I think have a good chance. I think the world of Ricky Starks, and I want to see more of him, and maybe have AEW break him out as the guy within Team Taz, because his personality and his promo and all that, it's just you got to do more with him. I think with Miro, I think that in 2021 they're going to have to do if Miro is going to break out in AEW, it's going to be next year. If it's not done next year, then my fear is with him is that he's going to be, he'll be there, he'll be around, because he's a good performer, and when he wants to, he's excellent when he wants to be. It's a matter of him understanding his business and understanding what why he should be a major star, and basically not take no for an answer in regards to that. In the WWE, the person who I want to see be a breakout star next year is Bianca Belair. Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley, because obviously you already know, I think the world of her and how it's time for her now to take her place as, you know, at the top of the food chain in the WWE Women's Division. It's time. And for Bianca Belair, I mean, Bianca Belair has improved within leaps and bounds, and I don't want somebody like Bianca Belair to kind of disappear within all that great talent, because the WWE Women's Division is outstanding. But somebody like Bianca Belair needs to be in the upper tier. She should not be in that middle pack. She shouldn't be there, because her talent and her whole presentation merits much more than that.
Okay. I think even though this guy's already a pretty good star, I think he's gonna probably win the title next year, probably by the end of the year. I'm gonna go with your boy MJF. I think right now they're in the middle of this story. By the time this story's over, I think it'll propel him one step further. And I think really by the end of the year, I think the last thing you see will be him winning that title, which sounds crazy because he's so young, but he's knocked it out of the park. Every time you're giving him something, he's knocked it out of the park.
He's done. Listen,
I think he's gonna do it. I really do.
Max has done great work for AEW. He really does. And even though for me, I have not been a fan of Chris Jericho's work in 2020. I'm just not. I'm just being honest with you. After the COVID thing came and then AEW started getting creative, from that point on, I've not been a fan of Jericho's work. And with MJF, I think if you're going to put the title on MJF, which I can clearly see that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can easily see MJF as the champion in AEW. It's a matter that in this story that he's in right now, I don't know if I'm perceiving him as being a breakout star as much as he is just being like that annoying kid that wants the screen time. And the thing is, he's always been that type of personality, but the reason why it was so good for him was because he was the solo act. And that's the reason why I'm saying that I'm not sure about him and Wardlow being with the Inner Circle, because I honestly don't think that they add anything more to the Inner Circle than they already had. I don't think that they necessarily add an element to that group that was needed. I think it actually might be too much of a good thing, and may end up not working the way that it should from an execution standpoint. So that's why I'm not a big fan of that pairing. Do I think that he can be the AEW champion? Absolutely, he can. Absolutely, but it's a matter of if and when, you know, whatever they do, like if he becomes the man in the Inner Circle, which I would prefer him not to be, or if he breaks out and goes, him and Wardlow or some other iteration of MJF goes out on his own, put the strap on him, because he can talk people into the arena. He works well, and, you know, put him in situations where he can look good, and always keep doing that, and he'll be just fine.
All right. So the year's coming to an end, Lou.
Yes, sir. It's been
It's time to say goodbye.
Well,
do you have anything to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, you know, when we started, when all of us, right, when we all started this podcast back in, I believe this was in March, realistically, just to give people, the listeners, just to give you guys kind of an inside baseball as to how this worked out. Basically, what this podcast became was just our conversations. This is myself, Victor. You've seen in earlier videos with Julio and Chris, and again, we want to thank them for their, for the time and the service they put in. It was just basically conversations that we would have, in chat groups. and we would watch all the wrestling shows, and the very same conversations that we have here verbally, we were doing it in text, and it would just go on and on and on and on. And we came up with the idea to say, well, why don't we just record it? Just makes sense. Let's just record it. Let's have a good time doing it, and let's see what happens. We've built this is video, I believe it's video 46, that this will be. So, we've averaged slightly more than one episode per week throughout the year of 2020. Our goal for 2021 is to get you at least 52, get you one every week. That's be the goal for next year. But it's a matter of, us being able to have a good time having these conversations, be able to, to spend time with each other. But it's also a matter of being able to, give opinions, presentations about pro wrestling, and just give our analysis for the community that we've built. I think the last I checked, I think it was like 51 subscribers, 52 subscribers, I think. I just want to say thank you. Thank you guys for being there, for subscribing, for showing us love, listening to the program. And, hopefully our conversations are entertaining, because even though I may not know who you are, but I'm grateful for you guys, and grateful for your listenership. And, my hope is that in 2021, this thing continues to grow. The community continues to grow, and that we can have more conversations, and hopefully we might be able to do some of these not via Zoom, but actually probably turn the camera and we'll all be in the same room, and we can just all shoot the breeze that way. That might be a fun way to record sometime next year, when we might be able to get together in more of a studio setting. But to the fans, I want to say thank you. We love you guys wherever you are. Thank you for your listenership. We truly appreciate you guys being here. And I speak for Victor, for Julio, for Chris, for everybody who's been on this program. We're grateful for you. We're absolutely grateful, and we're thankful for your listenership. And this will more than likely be the last episode that we'll do for the calendar year of 2020, unless some major thing happens, which I really hope doesn't. But not because I don't want to come back and record. It's just a matter that if it's something major, it generally will be something that's not good. So I want it to be positive there. And realistically, guys, just want to say we love you. Thank you so much. Have very happy holidays. Spend time with your family, and keep watching wrestling, because guess what? We'll be seeing you guys right back in the ring in 2021.
Like and subscribe, everyone.